Our story begins in Scotland. We see a man standing on the rocks, surrounded by splashing waves. Then we see him walk for an unknown amount of time. A town is shown that is populated with many crows. Eventually, this man arrives on a hill from which he looks at the town. The scene changes to someone unlocking a door to a room that seems to contain a restrained child. It doesn't last long. A young lady soon wakes up. Her alarm goes off at the late hour of 7 in the evening. She finds a crow's feather on her pillow. Interestingly, the first activity she engages in is doing push-ups. We can tell from this she isn't an ordinary lady. There is a reason why she needs to be fit. There is also a knife near her pillow. She opens a luggage, which contains police gear. As she puts it on, we see a burn mark on her neck. She is Rachel Heggie, our protagonist. After showing us she is an officer of the law, she leaves the vacancy where she spent the night. Once she does, someone turns the light on in the room above the entrance door, displaying their silhouette. We wonder why Rachel slept in a vacancy as opposed to her own place. The scene changes to a boy quickly driving a car. Meanwhile, Rachel patrols the empty streets. Shortly after, she sees the mysterious man walk a respectable distance in front of her. She drops the crow's feather upon seeing him. The boy driving arrives in that area, almost hitting her, but it looks like he runs into the man instead. Taken aback by this, Rachel rushes to check on the man, only to find he has vanished. She orders the boy to exit the car. After he comes out, we see blood on his headlights. Rachel asks him where the man went, only to receive feigned confusion from him. That makes her grab the boy with anger. He says she has nothing to arrest him for, because no one is there. That doesn't stop her from putting handcuffs on him. Afterward, she takes him to the police station. While there, our attention is briefly taken to several missing person posters. Rachel addresses another officer there as Sergeant Macready. He informs her the boy she caught is a regular visitor. Since she gives the sergeant her name, we learn this is her first day on the job. When the boy starts talking, the sergeant elbows him in the stomach. This makes him vomit. Unfortunately, some of it lands on Rachel's shoes. The next scene has a lady being intimate with a man in a car. He insults her, causing her to slap him. At the station, the boy sits with Macready while Rachel says he almost took someone's life. The boy's name is Caesar, who denies having done that. She finds a utility knife on him. Then the sergeant calls the two people in the car. It turns out they are both officers on duty, now wearing their uniforms. It's interesting how they choose to spend their work time. Rachel instructs them via radio to keep a lookout for the man she saw on the street. She describes him to the best of her ability. As Caesar is changing clothes, the sergeant asks Rachel whether she's imagining seeing the man outside. She tells him she found blood on the headlights. He says he would get the car checked if they had a victim, but they don't. At that moment, we witness a past event of Caesar driving his car and slamming into a girl. That's probably how he got the blood. Macready wants his newcomer to understand that he does things a certain way at his station. One of the rules he operates is that, if there's no victim, there's no crime. This makes the boy happy. Regardless, they start taking him into a cell. Once they place him in one, we see another person there in another cell. The sergeant tells Caesar that if he wants to spend more time in jail than in school, that is fine. They could always bring school to him in the form of other jailmates. Caesar asks what that man is in for. He assumes it could be for the of minors. When Macready is no longer with them, Rachel orders the boy to step back from the door to get his handcuffs removed. Yet he chooses to be rude to her. That's not a smart move, because she slams his hands against the metal. He accuses her of assaulting him. She just tells him to do as he's told. Caesar is glad the other man is there, due to him being a witness to the abuse. However, the man does not support him, saying he saw nothing. He adds that sometimes people need to be disciplined. That prompts Rachel to approach him, asking the man if that's what he did to end up there. She read about what he did to earn him that cell. All he says is that there are two sides to every story. Upon returning to the sergeant, Rachel hears from him that Caesar doesn't respond well to authority. Therefore, the sergeant has several ways of dealing with such cases. He says the other man's name is Ralph. He needs a punching bag. He soon shows her the reason he said that by presenting Ralph's report with a picture of his bruised wife. Macready is certain she will drop the charges against him in the morning. Rachel seems to know this is a common problem in abusive relationships. Then the two police officers from earlier arrive with the mystery man. The lady introduces herself as Mundy to the newcomer. The man is Jack, asking Rachel if they caught the right person. After confirming that they did, Macready orders Rachel to call a doctor for him. He asks the man his name, yet he stays silent. He just turns to look at Rachel, possessing some special interest in her. After that, we see that even at the police station, Mundy and Jack are fooling around. Soon, a man walks in on them. He is the doctor, Duncan Hume. The next scene has him tending to the man's hand. He has stayed silent the entire time he was at the station. Duncan thinks his silence could be voluntary. The sergeant wants to place him in a cell, but Rachel disagrees that not talking is deserving of imprisonment. She has also found zero identification on the mysterious man. All she has is a small book full of names. There are signs in it that could mean something. When the doctor starts saying something, the silent man surprises everyone by breaking his silence. Suddenly, the lights turn off. With that, Duncan gets transported elsewhere. He opens the door to the house to look inside. Blood drips on the wall. We hear crows flying from inside in his direction. so he quickly shuts the door, returning to the station from that inexplicable event. The doctor says the man knows everything, which leads Duncan to immediately attempt to use his scissors to take the man's life. Yet the officers prevent him from doing that. Due to his outburst, they have no choice except to add a third member to their cell room. As the policewomen are placing him there, Ralph gets told to stop talking because he makes remarks about the doctor. Ralph claims to be silent if the doctor will. Hypocrites are people he cannot stand. To that, Rachel asks him how he can explain his presence there, inferring he is one too. Caesar makes some noise, thinking she handled Ralph well. Mundy tells him to be quiet, calling him an idiot. Later, the mysterious man is getting his fingerprints taken. While he opens and closes his hand, Duncan is doing the same thing in his cell. So far, his presence at the station is presenting more questions than answers. In the interrogation room, the sergeant says he got some ID on the man. However, the details state he's supposed to have been deceased for a long time. MacReady tells him he looks very good for a man who passed away a few decades ago. That's the advantage of a clear conscience, says the man. This angers the sergeant, who crumples his false report prior to tossing it in the unidentified man's area. He retaliates by simply flicking the paper ball away, showing the sergeant that's what he thinks of him. Moving on, MacReady asks why the doctor attacked him. He gets a cryptic answer. It's due to midnight approaching. The sergeant also wants to know what the doctor meant about the mystery man knowing something. This just gets him another cryptic answer, that the price of their sins is paid for in blood. But it's not cryptic for the sergeant anymore, because he finishes the quote from the Bible for him. He proves himself to be somewhat worthy of exchanging lines with the man. He then looks at Rachel to start saying something else. After a few more words concerning Christianity, the mystery man gets angrier, saying people get to do what they want there. Perhaps he means they're on Earth. He seems to use his inexplicable power to give MacReady a similarly unsettling image as he installed into Duncan. Instantly, the sergeant orders Rachel to take the man away, out of fear. As she starts taking the fourth man to the cell room, MacReady sits there, scared. He looks like he doesn't know how to deal with this unexpectedly frightening situation. Following this, Rachel places the man in cell number 6. She says he should be out in the morning. In the cell, she briefly perceives a small girl. This causes her to get an uncomfortable flashback of herself restrained to a bed. Mundy is there to shut the cell door. While doing that, the man puts his hands on hers. Now she is the fourth person to be affected by him. She gets an image of herself with Jack, beating up a man at the station. It fills Mundy with fear, prompting her to leave. The man picks up the keys she dropped to give them to Rachel so she can finish locking him up. When she leaves, he asks his jailmates who's first. Subsequently, Rachel asks Mundy if she is okay. The lady doesn't want to talk about it. She also gives the newcomer the unpleasant news that they are not friends. At the computer area, the sergeant looks at the footage coming from the mystery man's cell. There's a camera watching each prisoner. MacReady wants to know the man who instilled him with fear. Shortly after, he wants to go somewhere with the other officers. But Rachel questions if it's wise to leave her alone with 4 inmates. The sergeant doesn't see a problem with it. He adds that if she wants to make it past probation, she will learn to listen. Before leaving, he says that in 25 years, he has not seen such blatant insubordination. Jack tosses Rachel a newspaper, telling her to enjoy the crossword section. He gets a laugh with Mundy out of teasing their new member. All she can do is give them the bird. Her first day is going very well, with Rachel making nothing except friends. Instead of doing crosswords, though, she watches the monitors of the prisoners. Afterward, the sergeant drives his car. He briefly sees the mystery man in his rear-view mirror. The man's eyes are completely white. This causes the sergeant to lose his calm. Checking the back seat proves that he was hallucinating. As he rides off, we observe someone lying injured nearby. In the cell room, the prisoners talk amongst themselves. The man with the power holds a crow's feather, which he seems to transform into a box of matches. He tells Ralph that the latter belongs in that cell. Ralph is amused by how the man knows his name. Then Rachel gets the idea to look through the man's book again. Once he moves a matchstick in his finger, this makes Rachel experience a painful flashback. She remembers being as a young girl. After the flashback, she uses the man's book to search for the people he has written down. Back in the cell room, the fourth member acts like the deliverer of justice upon telling Ralph that he's not getting away with what he did this time. Ralph gets uncomfortable, telling the newest member not to talk to him. Through his power, the man gives Ralph a mouth problem. He ends up removing his tooth. Meanwhile, Rachel discovers that the 3 people she so far searched for on the police records state they are deceased. The man asks Ralph who his wife is, and Ralph starts saying good things about her. He is sad while saying it. Now the man wants to hear who Ralph hates. Looking at Caesar, Ralph says it's him. He gave the wrong answer, prompting the man to say he should try harder. He lights his matchstick, which creates a shadowy hand that reaches into Ralph's cell. When the man blows out his matchstick, the shadow vanishes, along with the monitor going black. Rachel notices it. At that moment, she gets a radio call from Jack, informing her they are at Duncan's house. The powerful man drops the matchstick to make Ralph rush headfirst into the cell bars. Rachel rushes into that room because the alarm goes off, and there, she witnesses Ralph's injury. She opens the cell to deal with him, yet he pushes her down prior to falling himself. Duncan says he can help him. Since he's a doctor, she lets him out, trusting that he will do what he said he would. In the meantime, Jack investigates the doctor's house, only to find it's a complete disaster. A person is found. Duncan then gets Ralph to regain consciousness. He lifts his head to look at the man who did this to him. He tells him he saw who he is. In the next scene, we see a refrigerator full of dismembered human. Of all people, it is the sergeant that looks through it. He doesn't look through it like a policeman doing an investigation, but rather as something he probably caused. Getting a call from Rachel, he declines it. After that, he looks at an injured man lying in bed. MacReady wants the man to tell him who a certain man is. We get a flashback of how the sergeant beat this man to his current state. He yells, demanding to know who the man is. He very likely means his newest inmate. Back at the station, Rachel brings Ralph out of the cell room, with Duncan's help. She also answers the radio, because her colleagues are trying to reach her. They inform her of what Duncan did, ending his family. Unfortunately, the man is in that room, hearing what is being said about him. He tries to intimidate our heroine. Now that she knows, yet he's doing that to the wrong person. She has been through much harsher times. Taking a baton, Rachel slams him with it. Doing that gives her disturbing images. After them, she gets the maniac down to restrain him. He was hardly a problem for the tough lady. Her first day is going very well. Returning to the sergeant, he rests his head on a mirror, near his new lifeless victim. In the mirror, the face of the mysterious man appears to haunt him for less than 1 second. MacReady is forced to look at his victim, seeing no one else there. Back in the cell room, Rachel has a quick chat with the powerful man. She tells him to go to hell. However, he says there is no point in that, due to all the devils being with him already. Caesar tells her that the man she's talking to thinks they're there for a reason. The man asks her what she has done, and she answers she survived. He has to correct her to say she evolved. When she's leaving, he starts whistling. The man demonstrates how limitless his power is, because his mere whistle gives her another disturbing flashback. We see her as a young girl, attempting to free herself of her restraints. After managing to do so, she leaves her room to walk quietly within the house. She thankfully ends up running away. Out of the flashback, Rachel suffers, probably due to her memory being too strongly activated. Following this, she calls the sergeant to tell him what happened. After the call, he opens a long box near his bed that contains a shotgun. In the cell room, Caesar says he shouldn't be in there. That makes the man question why he is. He says he's giving the boy a chance, and not many people get one. This gives us a flashback involving Caesar. He drives while drinking alcohol, causing him to slam into a helpless girl. It seems like he got out to move her into the grass. The man tells Caesar she is still alive. He might even save her. Once the boy says he could get into more trouble that way, the man tells him it can't get any worse. In the other room, Rachel looks at the crossword in the newspaper to see it has nothing except unnerving words filled in. Soon the other officers return, seeing a lifeless Ralph there. Rachel informs them of what happened. Then they go into the cell room. Mundy takes Duncan out of his cell to give him serious trouble. Rachel wonders how that will help their situation. The powerful man answers her instead by saying they are not playing the game of salvation, they're playing the game of retribution. Afterward, the two policewomen occupy the interrogation room with Duncan. He tells Mundy he found a higher calling. We learn from Mundy that the maniac took his son's life horrifically. Meanwhile, Jack tells the nameless man he has a boy the same age as Duncan's son. It horrifies him that he witnessed such a brutal sight. He comes near the man's cell to say he knows what he would do with a monster like that. Switching back to the doctor, he says he's a man of science who thought he could find the key to immortality. He shows how crazy he is by saying he wanted to catch and preserve the soul. Of course, there's no way to catch a supposedly immaterial substance by using material. After that, the nameless man gives Jack the same image he earlier gave to his girlfriend. He remembers how they beat the man at the station before. Angered by the image, Jack leaves the room. At that moment, the nameless man's book flips to a page that has the names of the doctor, Jack, and Mundy on it. Jack storms into the interrogation room to flip the table over, without even thinking about it. He follows this action by giving Duncan a serious beating. Mundy orders Rachel to stay out of it. The fury does not leave Jack. It possesses him to end the doctor's life brutally. Once the man is gone, Mundy wants to work a story around what took place. Rachel takes offense to this, but Mundy calls it justice. Since she gives them static, the duo argues against her. Not only are there two of them, but they've also worked there considerably longer than her. They don't even know who she is. For all they know, she could be against them. Jack tells her they take care of their own. Mundy adds that Rachel should learn that rule quickly, or else she's doomed. The newcomer has no choice except to agree with them. Rachel then comes to Caesar, who finally confesses to her that he hit that girl with his car. He says she might still be alive. Contradicting him, the nameless man says she passed away a very precise 2 minutes ago. Rachel asks him how he knows that, prompting Caesar to answer for him that the man knows everything. The man tells the boy that he crossed the line, which causes Caesar to put on a face like he knows he's damned. Rachel has had enough of this man's ominous behavior, so she comes to him, demanding to know who he is. He tells her that she already knows. She just neglected to stay in touch. Those words give us another flashback of her being at the house again in her youthful form. She looks out the window to see the nameless man standing outside. Her abuser opens the front door to look at him. All we see is how they look at each other. It's implied that the nameless man took care of the problem for our young heroine. Thanks to him, she was able to escape. Out of the flashback, he tells Rachel her colleagues are now planning her murder. This makes her come out to spy on the police couple. She hears how Mundy says it has to be just those two, with no witnesses. Shortly after, Rachel's phone rings and the duo spots her there. The caller is Mac Reddy. She leaves the phone on the table without ending the call. After Rachel says something neutral about him, Jack insults the man. But Rachel says at least he's not trying to take someone's life to save his own. Hearing this, the sergeant asks what's going on. This trap Rachel has set up irritates her colleagues to the point where they start fighting. Rachel quickly handles Mundy, yet Jack poses a problem. She has to use pepper spray on him. Soon, Mundy gets revenge by delivering some damage to the newcomer. Then Sergeant Mac Reddy returns home without a shirt, in addition to being covered in barbed wire. The man has lost his mind. He's angry about the insult he received from Jack, so he shoots him with his shotgun. The other two hide as the sergeant finishes him. Rachel collects Caesar's utility knife to complement her baton. Meanwhile, the sergeant stands there, uttering a quote from the Bible. Once he's done, he comes hunting for them. Perhaps he's acting like this because he already realized his life could be over due to what the nameless man knows about him. Rachel surprises him by using her acquired knife to injure his leg. This allows both of the policewomen to run away. They lock the door, and Rachel even breaks the key inside the lock to prevent Mac Reddy from opening it. Mundy complains about that action because now they won't be able to exit. After that, the sergeant starts using a battering ram on the door. It doesn't take long for him to break through. He quickly arms himself with the shotgun to shoot Mundy in her shoulder. Fortunately, the policewomen run to hide in the cell room, where Rachel places her baton between the handle to barricade the door. Rachel wants the nameless man to do something. When he says he already is, she asks who gave him the right to do all this. At this point, he questions her belief that forgiving is a divine attribute. To forgive is to ignore. He also tells her that both of them are alike, in that they are cast out. Their difference is that he's there to do some good. Then the lights go out, prompting Rachel to look from the narrow window to see the sergeant spilling gasoline outside. He throws a lit match in the flammable liquid, allowing the flames to reach all the way to the entrance of the cell room. The nameless man tells Rachel to say the word for him to end it all now. However, she cannot. She opens his cell, but he stays in there. Rachel frees Caesar too, and they run out using blankets to cover themselves from the fire. Mac Reddy is there in the burning room, shooting at them. He misses, yet it does not matter because Mundy falls onto sharp glass while trying to escape from the window. This allows him to finish her off. In the meantime, the nameless man just sits in his cell as the flames draw closer. The sergeant shoots Rachel in her shoulder. Following this, he brutally puts an end to Caesar. Rachel finds a solution to this madness by throwing a gas canister at Mac Reddy. He shoots it in the air and it explodes. Since it wasn't enough to be fatal, Rachel takes the battering ram to bring it down on the crazed sergeant's head. After all that, she leaves the building. The nameless man casually walks out to join her. He tells her she's been to hell and back already. But for everyone else, tonight is their first time. He continues by saying that come midnight, the wicked will pay for their sins. It's he who comes to collect. Once he says this, we witness the clock change to the midnight hour. The man crosses out the names of the recently deceased from his book. Some strange black substance covers their heads. It seems to be symbolic of their damnation. The man then turns to a page that has a sketch of Rachel. All he wanted from them were their souls. Coming to Rachel, he says he wants a lot more than that from her. We get a flashback of her running away from the house as a child. He was there to watch her do it. Back in the present, the man wants her to understand that she could deny him all she wants, but he is the fire in her eyes. She can have her vengeance against any wicked person, and he will burn their souls. To him, it's a cold world without her. He tells her again to say the word. This time, affected by everything that happened and everything that he said, she says it. This makes the man of justice proud, and they kiss each other.